Captain Rick Raddick stared at the holographic display, arms crossed, a deep furrow etched across his brow. The words Hydro Assimilation Threat Global Alert flashed in crimson across the main command screen aboard the UNS Resolute. Around him, the bridge was filled with uneasy murmurs, hands hovering over consoles, officers shifting nervously in their seats. Rick was used to war. He'd seen the worst the galaxy had to offer: black hole torpedoes, viral bombs, matter destabilizers, even gravity collapsers. But this was something different. This was personal, this was biological, and it was heading straight for Earth. "Commander Voss," Rick said, voice low but steely, "I want a full breakdown of the reports from Delore Outpost. What exactly are we looking at here?" Commander Voss, tall, lean, with the haunted eyes of a man who'd spent too many nights awake in war zones, cleared his throat. He didn't meet Rick's eyes at first. Instead, he adjusted the holofeed and brought up a video surveillance footage from Delore. It started with a peaceful colony, verdant fields, winding rivers, families walking along bioglass promenades. Then the feed shifted. The sky darkened. A liquid mist spread across the settlement, slow and deliberate. Within minutes, people were convulsing, mutating, twisting into something unrecognizable. "The Calvo Empire has developed a new form of biochemical warfare," Voss said finally. "They call it Aquam Dominus. It's a liquid-based weapon, fluid, adaptable, and sentient in a way. It doesn't just kill, Captain, it reprograms." Rick's expression didn't change, but his knuckles tightened over the edge of the display console. "Reprograms." Voss nodded, fingers swiping across the display to reveal a 3D model of the compound's molecular structure. It's a composite of heavy water, advanced microbial agents, and what appears to be nanoscale processors, nanites. Once it enters a biological system, through drinking, exposure, even absorption, it binds to cells, rewrites their structure at a genetic level, and converts the host into something else, something Calvo. A stunned silence followed. One of the junior officers, Lieutenant Hanna, whispered what everyone else was thinking. "It turns you into one of them." Voss nodded grimly. "We've seen entire colonies fall in under 3 days. The Delore Outpost had over 25,000 inhabitants. Not a single one remains human. And now the Calvo have sent a message: surrender, or Earth is next." Rick turned back to the central holoscreen, which now displayed the ominous message from the Calvo Emperor, a translucent, aquatic being whose voice echoed with hollow finality. "Your resistance is meaningless. Submit or be consumed by the tide. We offer you salvation through unity. Refuse and be rewritten." The Calvo had always been a threat. Their expansionist campaigns were brutal, their technology terrifying. But this was different. This wasn't conquest through firepower. This was assimilation, bodily, spiritual, genetic, and Earth was now on the front line. "We've faced doomsday weapons before," Rick muttered. "What makes this one so different?" Voss didn't hesitate. "Because we can't shoot it. We can't outrun it. We can't firewall it or contain it. Once it enters a water supply, it spreads like wildfire. Through showers, drinking fountains, oceans. And once it's in a body, any body, it spreads through the bloodstream in seconds. Death is no longer the worst-case scenario. It's identity erasure." Rick took a breath, then looked around at the gathered officers. "And we're sure it's been deployed already." "Yes, sir," Voss confirmed. "Initial atmospheric scans show trace readings consistent with Aquam Dominus near Earth's outer orbit. We believe a test sample was released, perhaps to gauge our response time. Our containment protocols caught it just in time. But if they send more, if it reaches the oceans, we won't have days, we'll have hours." A low hum of fear rippled through the room. Commander Lyles, who rarely spoke unless necessary, finally broke his silence. "Sir, we may not be able to stop this one. If it's already in orbit, Earth is exposed. Our filters, our defenses, they're not designed to repel a molecular invasion." Rick turned sharply. "We don't talk like that. We don't assume we're beaten before we start swinging. We analyze, we strategize, and then we hit back harder than they ever saw coming." Lyles nodded, chastened. Understood, Captain. But despite the show of bravado, Rick knew they were in uncharted territory. The Calvo's new weapon wasn't just terrifying, it was a paradigm shift. Previous wars had been fought with ships, drones, cannons. This was cellular. This was total. And worst of all, it was clean. There were no explosions, no rubble. Just silence, transformation, domination through water. Rick's mind flashed back to Earth's vulnerability. The oceans, rivers, desalination plants, even bottled water. Everything was interconnected. All it would take was a few droplets introduced into a key reservoir, and humanity would be undone from the inside out. Options, he barked. Give me options. Voss exchanged a nervous glance with Dr. Henley, the ship's chief biochemist, who had joined the briefing midstream. She stepped forward, clutching a tablet full of data. We've managed to secure a sample of the compound from Delore, she said. Barely. It's under extreme containment in our science bay. The problem is, Captain, it behaves like a living thing. It doesn't just exist, it reacts. When we tried to isolate its components, it adapted, changed structure. It behaves like it wants to survive. Rick raised an eyebrow. So it's sentient? Henley hesitated. Not quite. Not in the way we define consciousness. But yes, it exhibits what we call reactive intelligence. When we applied radiation to try and destabilize it, it thickened. When we froze it, it divided. It's aware. The command center was silent again, this time not from shock, but from realization. This isn't a weapon, Rick said slowly. It's an invasive species, one that's been programmed to consume. It's not just war, it's evolution by force. Henley nodded. Exactly. The Calvo don't want to destroy us. They want to rewrite us. Use our own water, our own biology against us. It's efficient, horrifyingly so. Voss pulled up additional files. And Earth is the perfect target. Over 70% water coverage. Billions of unfiltered access points. The moment this stuff reaches the planet, the clock starts ticking. Rick stared at the spinning blue orb on the screen. Earth, his home. 1,000 images ran through his mind, children playing in sprinklers, ships drawing seawater, factories using water to cool reactors. It was all connected. One crack in the armor, the entire species could be compromised. What about the Calvo themselves, he asked. Do we know if they use it? Are they immune? Voss shook his head. Best we can tell, they've never used it on themselves. It's a one-way weapon. They have natural resistance due to their aquatic physiology, but they seem hesitant to deploy it anywhere close to their own systems. That suggests they can't control it. Not entirely. Rick's eyes narrowed. So they're afraid of their own creation. Henley added, more like cautious. They know what it can do, and they know it's unpredictable. Once unleashed, it obeys its core programming, but that doesn't mean it won't evolve past it. That idea chilled Rick more than anything else. A weapon that could outgrow its own masters. That wasn't just science fiction. It was existential horror, not just for Earth, but for every species in the galaxy. We need to understand it, he said finally. If we're going to stand a chance, we need to know how it works, how it thinks. We need to get ahead of it before it lands on our front porch. Voss looked uncertain. With all due respect, Captain, that would mean direct interaction, exposure. Rick's gaze didn't flinch. I know. Around the bridge, the implications of that hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Rick Raddick had always been bold, but this was something else entirely. Still, they all knew. He was right. The only way to fight something that changed you was to understand the change itself. And so, with Earth hanging in the balance, humanity's greatest battle wasn't going to be fought in the skies or in space. It would be fought at the molecular level, deep within the human body, against an enemy no one could see. The Calvo thought they had created the perfect weapon. But what they didn't understand, what they had never counted on, was that humans were survivors, fighters, and more importantly, adapters. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The silence in the command center was unbearable. Captain Rick Raddick stood still in front of the holographic display, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the swirling image of the Aquam Dominus compound. The alien liquid pulsated in iridescent blue hues on the screen like it had a heartbeat of its own. Around him, every officer, technician, and scientist held their breath, waiting for someone to break the silence that had settled like fog after a storm. And then Rick said the unthinkable. What if we didn't resist it? There was a beat of stunned quiet. Then Commander Voss choked. Excuse me, Captain. Rick didn't take his eyes off the screen. What if, instead of running, instead of defending, we engage with it directly? What if we let it in? On our terms? The command center burst into chaos. Captain, with all due respect, that's suicide, Dr. Henley barked, stepping forward. This isn't a drug. It's not a serum. It's a hostile, adaptive molecular weapon designed to override organic biology. You're suggesting we allow it to do what it was designed to do. Yes, Rick said flatly, but with a twist. Lieutenant Hanna looked visibly ill. Sir, this thing rewrites DNA. It mutates tissue. It turns people into Calvo hybrids. You've seen the Delore footage? I have, Rick replied. I also saw how fast it worked, how it responded, how it evolved. But what if it could be guided? What if we could intercept the process before it completed and steer it in a different direction? What if someone took it in, not to be overtaken, but to learn how it works from the inside out? You're talking about interfacing, Henley whispered, horror growing on her face. Letting it bond. Exactly. You want to create a host, Voss said slowly, trying to wrap his mind around it. Captain, that's not just risky. It's madness. I don't disagree, Rick said calmly. But nothing we've done so far has stopped the Calvo. We're playing defense in a game where offense is the only thing that counts. If we're going to survive this, we need more than shields. We need understanding. We need to get ahead of this weapon. That means letting someone become the battlefield. Henley looked at him like he'd grown another head. Even if someone volunteered, hell, even if it worked, they might not survive. And if they do survive, we don't know what they'll become. I know, Rick replied, turning from the screen to face the room, which is why I'll go first. Gasps echoed across the bridge. No, Voss said, stepping forward immediately. Captain, you can't be serious. You're the commanding officer of this ship. You're the highest-ranking field commander in this sector. We need you alive, sane, and intact, not fused with some alien weapon. Rick's voice was low, calm, but full of conviction. That's exactly why it has to be me. If I'm not willing to face this first, how can I ask anyone else to? I'm not asking for blind loyalty here. I'm asking for courage. If I'm going to ask men and women to risk everything, then I need to walk that road first. Voss's jaw clenched. This isn't a mission. This is a gamble. You don't come back from this. No one's come back from contact with Aquam Dominus because no one's tried to take control, Rick replied. We've treated it like a death sentence. But I think it's a key. Maybe not a key we fully understand. But if there's even a chance that it can be bent, redirected, then it's a risk we have to take. Dr. Henley looks sick. You realize we can't give clearance for this? No governing body will approve human testing of this weapon. I'm not asking for clearance, Rick said simply. I'm giving an order. A heavy silence followed. Even the ever-busy hum of the ship's background systems seemed to hold its breath. No one spoke. No one moved. Because despite their fears, they all understood what Rick was really saying. This was a suicide mission, but it was one that might just buy them a future. Dr. Henley slowly removed her glasses and looked up at him. If we do this, we'll need a containment field, full neural monitoring, immediate access to emergency medical protocol, and a backup. If it goes bad, we might have to kill you. Rick nodded. Understood. Do what you need to. If I lose control, I need you to shut me down without hesitation. Voss's jaw twitched. I don't like this. I don't either, Rick said, offering a faint smile. But I like losing Earth even less. Within the hour, the ship's medbay had been transformed into a makeshift high-security biolab. Medical equipment, reinforced observation glass, and a sealed containment chamber had been brought online. Engineers calibrated neural interfaces, biomonitors, and emergency purge systems. A vial of Aquam Dominus, locked inside 3 layers of shielding, was transferred from the science lab under heavy guard. Rick stood in the prep chamber, wearing a reinforced undersuit designed to monitor vitals and protect him from environmental trauma. Not that it would help against the thing they were about to introduce into his bloodstream. His armor felt heavy, not from weight, but from the realization of what was about to happen. Dr. Henley approached, her expression grim. "You can still back out. No one would blame you." Rick shook his head. "Too late. You said it yourself. We need data. I'm going to get it for you." She handed him the vial. The liquid inside shimmered like molten sapphire, its surface pulsing slowly. It didn't slosh like normal water. It moved with intention, as if it knew what was coming. "Once it's inside," she said, "we can't guarantee anything. You might survive, you might not. It might kill you, mutate you, or make me something new," Rick finished, raising the vial. "Yeah, I've thought about that." Dr. Henley swallowed hard. "Good luck, Captain." Rick looked around at the crowd beyond the glass. Voss stood at the command console, hand ready over the purge trigger. A small team of scientists and engineers watched from behind sealed observation panels, faces tense with apprehension. Rick gave a short nod, and then he drank it. The moment the aquam dominus touched his throat, it was like swallowing acid and electricity at the same time. His chest exploded with heat. Every nerve ending lit up like someone had shoved live wires through his spine. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, muscles twitching uncontrollably as the substance rushed through his veins. Monitors flared to life. Spiking heart rate, erratic brain waves, cellular activity off the charts. "Vitals spiking," one of the medics shouted. "We're seeing extreme neural turbulence. Complete system overload." Rick's body convulsed on the floor of the containment chamber. Sweat poured off his face. His hands clawed at the ground as if he were fighting something no one else could see. And in a way, he was. The aquam dominus wasn't just attacking his body, it was trying to hijack it. From behind the glass, Voss turned to Henley. "Should we initiate the purge?" "Wait," she said, eyes locked on the monitors. "He's leveling." "What?" "Look at his brainwave activity. It's adapting. He's stabilizing." Inside the chamber, Rick's screams faded. His body stopped thrashing. He was breathing heavily but steadily. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his feet. His eyes opened, and they glowed faintly blue, like the liquid itself had merged with his blood. "Captain," Henley asked into the comms, her voice shaking. Rick nodded slowly. "I'm still me." The room exploded in motion. Teams ran scans, analyzed vitals, monitored brain patterns. Against all odds, Rick Raddick had survived the impossible, and he hadn't lost himself in the process. In fact, something had changed. His reflexes, his perception, even his stamina, they were elevated. The aquam dominus wasn't destroying him, it was enhancing him. Voss stared through the glass. He controlled it. Henley whispered, "No, he adapted to it, just like humans always have." Rick stood in the center of the containment chamber, breathing hard but steady, his body humming with power. And as the realization sank in, he looked straight at the observation deck and said the words that would define humanity's next move. "We're not done. Not even close. Now, we go to war." Pain. It wasn't just pain. It was something beyond comprehension. A sensation so overwhelming that Rick Raddick thought, for a moment, he had ceased to exist altogether. There were no words for what the aquam dominus did to his body once it entered. The second he swallowed the shimmering blue liquid, it was like his insides erupted into molten fire. He dropped to the floor of the containment chamber as his muscles convulsed violently, his breath catching in his throat. Outside the glass, the medbay was in full panic mode. Monitors screamed in warning. Vital signs were fluctuating so rapidly that some of the readings simply froze or collapsed into static. Rick's neural activity spiked into levels previously thought impossible. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen, every stat jumped off the charts. "Neural overload," shouted one of the medics. "We're losing him!" "Hold the purge," Dr. Henley snapped, eyes locked on the screen in front of her. "Give him 30 more seconds." Commander Voss hovered with one hand over the emergency purge switch, his fingers twitching. "Henley, he's seizing. "We don't have 30 seconds." But Henley didn't move. Something was happening, something she hadn't expected. Rick wasn't dying. Not yet. Inside the chamber, Rick was locked in a brutal struggle. The aquam dominus wasn't just a substance. It wasn't a liquid in the conventional sense. It had purpose. It had programming. It had intent. And that intent was to take over. He felt it moving through him, into his bloodstream, his lungs, his brain. His cells screamed as they were invaded. The foreign molecules latched onto his DNA, trying to twist it, overwrite it, force him into a new shape. Every part of him was under siege. His vision blurred. His hearing went out. The world shrank to a tunnel of light and noise and fire. But then something remarkable happened. Rick didn't submit. He fought back, not physically, but mentally. He focused on his identity, his memories, his sense of self. He thought of Earth, of his crew, his family, the billions of lives at risk. He clung to the sound of his own name, the feeling of command, the weight of responsibility that had always grounded him. And somewhere, in the storm of molecular chaos, the aquam dominus paused. It didn't retreat, but it hesitated, like a sentient force reevaluating its options. The nanites inside the fluid, programmed to dominate and control, encountered something they hadn't been prepared for: resistance, not from the immune system, but from the mind. Rick wasn't just another host. He was a human, and humans didn't fold under pressure. They adapted. Suddenly, the pain began to shift. The fire in his veins didn't burn anymore. It hummed. The spasms in his muscles slowed, then stopped. His heart steadied. The neural chaos on the monitors began to calm. "Wait," a medic whispered from outside the glass. "Look at that. His vitals, they're stabilizing." Dr. Henley leaned forward, blinking rapidly at the data streaming across her screen. "That's impossible." "He's breathing normally," another technician added. "Oxygen levels are climbing. Neural patterns, they're syncing." Inside the containment chamber, Rick opened his eyes. They glowed. Not brightly, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but subtly. Faint streaks of blue shimmered around his pupils, as if the liquid he had consumed had etched itself into his very soul. He sat up slowly, no longer writhing, no longer in agony. His breathing was calm, controlled. "Rick," Henley's voice crackled through the intercom. "Can you hear me?" He nodded slowly, placing a hand on the chamber floor to brace himself as he stood. "I can hear you," he said hoarsely, voice still raw from the ordeal. "I can feel it inside me." "What do you mean, is it still active?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "but it's not fighting me anymore. I think I've taken control." Outside, everyone froze. Commander Voss stepped closer to the glass, staring at Rick as if seeing him for the first time. You're not changing," Voss asked. Rick lifted his hand and flexed his fingers, staring at them with a strange fascination. "Not in the way they intended. I'm still me, but I'm more." Henley's voice was a mix of awe and fear. "More how?" Rick closed his eyes, reaching inward, into the sensations now coursing through him. His awareness stretched. He could feel the pulse of his own blood, the chemical makeup of the air, the subtle shifts in gravitational pull from the ship's artificial stabilizers. "I can think faster. I can feel my cells responding, healing. My reflexes are sharper. There's something different. It's like my body's communicating with itself on a new level. And the aquam dominus. It's part of that now." Henley's hands trembled as she typed out notes. "You're saying it didn't kill you, mutate you, or erase you? It bonded with you?" Rick nodded. "It tried to dominate, but when I didn't break, it shifted, adapted. We reached a kind of standoff. Now it's working with me." Voss was still staring, a look of stunned disbelief on his face. "Are you in pain?" "No," Rick replied. "Not anymore." Henley took a deep breath. "We need to run tests, blood work, neuroimaging, full scans. If this is real, if the aquam dominus can be domesticated, redirected, we could have the key to not only surviving, but winning this war." Rick stepped forward, his movements fluid, controlled, powerful. Then let's get to work. Over the next several days, the medbay became the most important room in the galaxy. Rick underwent every test known to human science, and then some developed on the fly by Henley and her team. Blood samples showed increased oxygen retention. His muscle fibers had strengthened by 30% without training. Neural scans indicated faster synaptic response. His cells regenerated at a rate unseen in baseline humans. But perhaps most astonishingly, the aquam dominus had not spread beyond his body. It remained confined, integrated, dormant, unless consciously activated. It wasn't behaving like a virus. It was behaving like a tool. "We've never seen anything like this," Henley said, rubbing her temples after reviewing the 4th round of test results. "It didn't just fail to destroy you, it made you better." Rick was sitting shirtless on a reinforced bench, small biosensors still attached to his skin. "You think it's repeatable?" Henley glanced toward Voss, who stood nearby. "We're not sure. Every human body is different. But if we can replicate your response, carefully with volunteers, we could create a defense program, maybe even an offensive one." "Enhanced soldiers," Voss said, his tone cautious. "Weaponizing the weapon." Henley shook her head. "Not weaponizing, harmonizing. The aquam dominus isn't just a weapon, it's a catalyst, and it looks like humans can survive the transformation under certain conditions." "Rick proved that." Rick leaned forward, expression serious. "Then we don't wait. We find volunteers. We do it smart. We do it safe. But we prepare. Because the Calvo are coming." That night, Rick sat alone in his quarters, the soft hum of the ship's systems echoing in the quiet. He stared at his reflection in the polished metal wall. His eyes still held that faint blue shimmer, but otherwise he looked the same. No alien features, no mutations, just him. But inside he felt different. There was a quiet energy beneath his skin, a presence that responded to his thoughts, that pulsed with his heartbeat. It wasn't malevolent anymore. It was curious, almost cooperative. And he knew instinctively that this was just the beginning. He clenched his fists and exhaled slowly. The Calvo had built this weapon to erase humanity. But now, in a twist of fate, their greatest threat was becoming humanity's greatest strength. They had sent a wave to drown the Earth, and now Earth was learning how to breathe underwater. The transformation of Captain Rick Raddick from a hardened war veteran into something altogether new, something not quite human, but not alien either, sent a shockwave through every command structure in the human military. The impossible had happened. A man had not only survived direct exposure to the aquam dominus, but had turned it into an advantage. And now they had to decide what came next. The medbay, once a place of emergency triage and quiet protocol, had become the most heavily guarded location on the UNS Resolute. Rick's enhanced physiology and successful bonding with the liquid bioweapon were not just a medical anomaly. They were a tactical opportunity. For the first time in months, humanity had something it had lost since the Calvo launched their campaign of assimilation. Hope. Rick stood at the center of the medbay, flanked by armed guards, not for his protection, but for the ship's. There was still a lingering fear that whatever lived inside him could suddenly take over, turn him into something monstrous. But that hadn't happened. Not yet. If anything, he seemed more focused, more in control, more human than ever before. Across from him, Dr. Henley stood with arms folded, datapad in hand, her eyes flicking over Rick's bio readings, streaming in real time. Next to her, Commander Voss kept silent, his usual skepticism replaced by cautious respect. "We've reviewed all of the results, Captain," Henley began. "Your vitals are stable. Your physical enhancements have reached a plateau, not diminishing, but no longer evolving. You seem to have reached equilibrium with the aquam dominus." "So it's not growing anymore?" Rick asked. "Correct. Whatever process occurred between you and the substance has settled into a fixed state. But what's more important? You're able to control it." Rick nodded. "That's what I wanted to hear, because now it's time to scale this." Henley's brow furrowed. "Scale it?" Rick took a step forward. "What happened to me wasn't a fluke. It was a proof of concept. The aquam dominus doesn't destroy every human it touches. It responds to willpower, to resistance. That means we can find others like me, people strong enough to survive the transition. We don't just need one of me, we need dozens, hundreds. Nah. Voss's arms crossed slowly. You're talking about building a unit. I'm talking about building a new kind of soldier, Rick replied. A force made up of humans enhanced with this tech. Soldiers who don't just fight the Calvo, they beat them at their own game. We don't run from their weapons anymore. We become them and turn it against them. Henley hesitated. The transformation isn't without risks, Rick. You barely made it through. The neural stress, the cellular adaptation, it pushed your body to its absolute limits. Which is why we'll screen carefully, Rick said. We'll find the strongest, the most disciplined. Volunteers only. No conscripts, no force. But if we can build a squad, a strike team, we can take the war back to them. Voss exchanged a glance with Henley. And what would you call this squad? Rick's eyes lit with the fire of conviction. The Hydro Commandos. Recruitment was slow at first. Rick sent out a private request to all human military divisions across the Galactic Front classified orders. High risk, zero promise of survival. It was the kind of mission only lunatics, martyrs, or the supremely loyal would respond to. Surprisingly, the response was overwhelming. Over 2,000 candidates submitted for evaluation within the first 48 hours. They came from every corner of the military: frontline Marines, special ops, bioresistance researchers, even a few rogue engineers who had fought against Calvo infection on their homeworlds. They weren't all strong, they weren't all balanced, but every one of them had seen what the Calvo could do, and they all shared one thing. They weren't afraid anymore. Out of the 2,000 volunteers, only 87 made it past the first round of screenings. The psychological tests alone eliminated most. Willpower had proven to be one of the key factors in Rick's survival. Candidates needed to have unshakable identity, mental resilience, and discipline stronger than instinct. From those 87, only 34 were selected for exposure trials. Each trial took place under intense medical supervision in reinforced containment labs, and each transformation was unique. Some suffered seizures, others blacked out. A few, heartbreakingly, didn't survive. But those who did, they emerged changed, not warped, not corrupted. Stronger, faster, sharper. Their reflexes enhanced, their immune systems supercharged, their neural networks optimized. They retained their humanity, but they had become something more. Hybrid warriors capable of facing the Calvo, not as prey, but as equals. The Hydro Commandos had been born. Rick oversaw every phase of the project, from psychological screening to physical trials to combat conditioning. He wasn't just their leader, he was the prototype, the living proof that the process could work. Training took place in the asteroid belt simulator known as Obsidian Forge, a classified military station far from any civilian traffic. There, the new commandos underwent 12-hour combat rotations, live-fire drills, zero-G environment exercises, and Aquam Dominus modulation training. The latter was the most important. Each commando had a unique relationship with the substance inside them. For some, it enhanced perception, reaction speed, targeting accuracy, even limited predictive movement. For others, it boosted physical resilience, bone density, muscle recovery, resistance to trauma. And a few, like Rick, could actually communicate with the Aquam Dominus. Not in language, but through intuition and intention. It's not a tool, Rick explained to them during one of the early sessions. It's a partner. You don't command it, you guide it. If you force it, it fights. If you accept it, it flows. Those who didn't understand that bond washed out of the program. No shame, no punishment, just honesty. You couldn't fake a connection to the thing living inside your blood. By the end of 3 months, only 16 commandos remained. Each one was faster than a standard human, stronger than a power suit, sharper than any AI interface, and more importantly, they were united. They trained, lived, and bled as one. Rick had built them not just as weapons, but as family. He watched them spar one day in the Forge's gravity-adjusted arena, 5-on-5 drills using live plasma blades and kinetic shields. Their movement was effortless, fluid, like dancers with blades. Each of them knew how to anticipate the others, adjusting their positions in real time based on shared cues and instincts. The Aquam Dominus wasn't just enhancing their bodies, it was connecting them. Henley stood beside him, arms crossed, impressed despite herself. "You realize what you've done, don't you?" Rick didn't take his eyes off the training session. "I've built the tip of the spear." "No," Henley said quietly. "You've built a new evolutionary branch of humanity." He let the words sink in. She was right. The Calvo had created Aquam Dominus to erase human life, to convert it into something servile and broken. But now, in the hands of those willing to endure the pain, the fear, and the unknown, it had become something entirely different. It had become the edge humanity needed to fight back. They didn't announce the Hydro Commandos to the rest of the military. Not yet. Everything about the unit remained classified, buried beneath layers of security clearances and deniability. If word got out that humans were experimenting with alien bioweapons, let alone integrating them, panic would spread like wildfire across the colonies. Instead, Rick planned in silence. He wasn't just preparing to defend Earth anymore. He was preparing to strike. Every piece was coming into place: the enhancements, the discipline, the unity. But one thing still remained, proving the Hydro Commandos weren't just weapons. They were the beginning of a counter-offensive. "We're ready," Rick said to Voss as they reviewed the final training logs in the Forge's command deck. "You're sure?" Voss asked. Rick nodded. "We don't just have soldiers anymore. We have answers. We have leverage. The Calvo don't know what's coming." Voss gave a grim smile. "Then we'd better show them." The sky above the Calvo homeworld shimmered with a thick, aquatic blue haze, a misty shell of atmosphere filled with moisture and pressure, designed to nourish their aquatic cities and protect their species from external pollutants. To the human eye, it looked more like an underwater world wrapped in a storm cloud than a livable planet. That didn't matter to Rick Raddick. He wasn't here to admire the view. From the deck of the Invictus, a stealth-class interstellar assault ship built for rapid planetary incursions, Rick stared down at the planet below. Calvarus Prime, the very seat of the Calvo Empire, the birthplace of the Aquam Dominus, the place where the order to surrender Earth or face assimilation had been issued with smug assurance. That arrogance was about to cost them everything. Behind him stood his handpicked team, the Hydro Commandos. 16 elite soldiers, each infused with the same alien bioweapon that had once threatened to destroy humanity. Now it flowed through their veins like liquid fire, empowering them, enhancing them, bonding them together into a new kind of fighting force. Rick turned to face them. "We're not just soldiers anymore. We're the counter-argument to their entire empire. We're the rebuttal to their ultimatum. The Calvo wanted to break us. They wanted to turn us into them. But we adapted. We turned their weapon into our strength." He paused, letting his words land in the hearts of his team. "They've never had to fight someone like us. That ends today." The commandos let out a unified low growl of affirmation, fists tightening, faces focused. Each one was a walking weapon, and they were ready to make history. As the Invictus sliced through Calvarus Prime's upper atmosphere, its advanced cloaking systems kept them hidden from the enemy's planetary defense grid. The ship had been modified with hybrid tech, combining human engineering with insights gained from Aquam Dominus neural readings. It wasn't just stealthy, it was fast, silent, and designed for a single purpose: getting Rick's team onto the surface without triggering a planet-wide alert. Commander Voss's voice crackled through the comms from the operations deck. "You're clear to drop. Touchdown coordinates set for Sector Epsilon, roughly 3 clicks from their central command." Rick nodded. "Acknowledged. Keep the ship cloaked and in orbit. We'll call for retrieval when the job's done." "Copy that, Captain." And Rick, "Yeah, finish this." Rick smirked. "Wouldn't dream of anything else." The drop bay doors opened, and the commandos stepped forward into the launch chutes. Each wore a reinforced exosuit specially designed to harmonize with their enhanced biology. The suits were lightweight but resilient, responsive to their movements, and integrated with adaptive water filtration systems, necessary for surviving extended periods in the high-humidity Calvo environment. "Hydro Commandos," Rick barked as he stepped into his own launch chute. "Initiate drop." One by one, the soldiers launched into the air like thunderbolts, their descent powered by grav chutes that adjusted their trajectory in real time. They fell in silence. No comm chatter, no unnecessary noise. Every man and woman on that team knew exactly what to do. Rick hit the ground first. The impact was hard, but the suit absorbed the worst of it. He rolled, came up in a crouch, scanned the environment. Dense foliage surrounded them, thick, damp, and bioluminescent, the trees pulsing with soft blue light. The entire world felt like it had been designed underwater and then yanked into gravity. Even the ground squished beneath their boots. "Status," he whispered. "All green," came the quiet chorus of replies. The squad moved like shadows, fanning out in a staggered diamond formation. Their target, the Calvo Central Command Tower, a spire of living coral and alloy that housed the ruling class of the Calvo species. If Rick could take that tower, decapitate the command structure, the rest of the Empire would crumble into confusion. Time to end this. As they moved through the jungled terrain, it didn't take long before they ran into the first wave of resistance. Calvo soldiers, tall, fluid-limbed, their bodies a blend of organic and synthetic, slithered from the trees. Their armor gleamed with moisture, and their weapons fired streams of high-density water charged with electric pulses. The Hydro Commandos didn't flinch. "Engage," Rick ordered. The battle exploded into life. Rick dove to the side as a jet of compressed hydroplasma blasted the spot where he'd been standing. He landed behind a mossy outcrop and returned fire with his pulse rifle. One shot, clean and precise, dropped a Calvo soldier mid-sprint. To his right, Sergeant Vale leapt into a group of 3 enemies, her aquam-enhanced limbs moving with unnatural speed. She dodged one swing, parried another, then drove her blade through the chest of the third. Her eyes gleamed with that same blue light Rick carried, a sign of the bond between them and the substance inside. More Calvo troops poured in, emerging from hidden bunkers, vine-covered domes, and deep-rooted tunnels. The forest became a blur of motion, gunfire, and light. But the Hydro Commandos didn't break formation. They moved as one, anticipating each other's actions. They fought not like soldiers, but like instincts given flesh. Every blow, every shot, every retreat in advance. It was like watching a machine with 16 minds and one purpose. Rick ducked under a blast, slid across the wet terrain, and fired twice. 2 more Calvo fell. He stood panting, feeling the rush of aquam dominus flow through him like liquid adrenaline. It didn't overwhelm him. It synced with him. They weren't just fighting, they were evolving in real time. "Push forward," he roared. "We're not here to win a skirmish. We're here to end a war." Howl. By the time they reached the outskirts of the command tower, the jungle behind them was littered with the wreckage of alien tech and the still forms of defeated enemies. The tower loomed ahead, massive, pulsing, alive. It wasn't just a structure. It was a living organism, grown from coral and modified alloy, glowing with a deep aquatic light. A ring of Calvo guards surrounded it, their weapons raised, their tendrils twitching. Rick raised his fist, signaling a halt. "They know we're here," Vale said over the team channel. "Good," Rick replied. "Let's not disappoint them." He drew his blade, a plasma-forged sword designed for close-quarters combat. The others followed suit, drawing weapons powered not just by tech, but by the bond between aquam dominus and their bodies. Their weapons hummed with power, resonating with the energy in their veins. "On me," Rick said. They charged. The battle was short and brutal. The Hydro Commandos tore through the Calvo defenders like a storm. For every blast of energy or swiping tendril, there was a counterstrike from enhanced limbs, a dodge aided by sharpened reflexes, a return blast from weapons tuned to their very biology. Rick reached the main doors of the tower and set an explosive charge. 3, 2, the doors shattered inward. Inside, the chamber was quiet. The Calvo leadership, 5 towering ancient beings with translucent skin and layered membranes, stood around a massive bioluminescent map of the galaxy. They looked up as Rick and his team entered, blue eyes flickering with what could have been surprise or fear. Rick raised his weapon. "Your reign ends here." He pulled the trigger. The battle outside collapsed in minutes. The Calvo command network, designed around centralized psychic links and biological signal relays, disintegrated the moment its leaders were eliminated. Without their core, their communications failed. Their units splintered. Their forces faltered. From orbit, Commander Voss watched in real time as Calvo resistance across the planet dropped by nearly 80%. "They did it," Henley whispered beside him. "They actually did it." Back on the ground, Rick stood at the center of the tower's command node, surrounded by the still forms of the Calvo elite. His body hummed with the energy of the Aquam Dominus, and for the first time since this nightmare began, there was silence. Not fear, not defeat, victory. They had taken the war to the Calvo, and they had won. Smoke rose over the skyline of Calvus Prime. Not fire and brimstone, but smoke born from fallen towers, shattered defenses, and the ruins of an empire built on fear. For the first time in history, the Calvo, the galaxy's most feared conquerors, had been brought to their knees. And it wasn't done by superior numbers or overwhelming technology. It was done by something no one had expected: human adaptation. The Hydro Commandos stood victorious inside the Calvo Central Command. Their armor was scarred, their bodies bruised, and their minds weary. But they were alive. More than that, they had done what no species in the galaxy had ever dared to attempt. They had walked directly into the lion's den and turned the predator into prey. Captain Rick Raddick paced through the chamber that, just an hour ago, had been filled with Calvo leaders issuing orders for galactic domination. Now it was quiet. He passed the bodies of those once mighty rulers, their strange translucent skin now dulled in death. Around him, his team remained alert, guarding entrances, checking vitals, securing data caches and communication logs. No celebration, no cheers, just purpose. This wasn't just a battle, it was a message. To the Calvo, to the galaxy, and to themselves. "We have to move fast," Sergeant Vale said, approaching Rick. Her voice was level, her eyes sharp, but beneath her calm demeanor, Rick could see it: the fatigue. "The remaining Calvo forces are scattered, confused. We can either push them into total surrender or extract now and give them time to regroup." Rick considered that. This wasn't just about winning a fight, it was about ending a cycle. "No," he said, "we take control of this tower, we broadcast. We let the galaxy see what just happened, not for glory, for truth." Vale nodded. "I'll prep the signal." Back aboard the Invictus, Commander Voss monitored planetary channels. He watched as networks previously encrypted with Calvo war propaganda began flickering with new activity, feeds being hijacked, channels overridden. And then, on every screen, every broadcast tower, every orbital relay across the Calvo Empire, a single message played. Rick stood in front of the Calvo's own command interface, flanked by his team. His eyes bore the faint glow of Aquam Dominus, the mark of what he'd endured and what he now carried willingly. "This is Captain Rick Raddick, United Nations Fleet, commander of the Hydro Commandos. This message is not a threat. It is not a warning. It is a truth." He paused. "You tried to erase us. You created a weapon designed to control us, to rewrite us, to make us into you. But humans don't work like that. We don't submit. We adapt. We evolve. We take the worst you throw at us, and we turn it into strength." He took a breath, voice steady. "You thought Aquam Dominus would end our species. Instead, it helped us become something more. We came to your world not just to survive, but to stop this war for good. The Calvo Empire ends today. Not because we destroyed you, but because we proved your greatest weapon doesn't work on us." The screen cut to black, then silence. Then across the galaxy, Calvo-controlled colonies began surrendering. Voluntarily. Not out of fear, out of awe, out of respect, out of the realization that they had underestimated the one species capable of taking the unimaginable and making it familiar. Humans. The weeks that followed were filled with transition. The Invictus returned to Earth orbit as a hero's ship, but no parades waited for the Hydro Commandos. Their mission had been classified, and Rick wanted to keep it that way, for now. They weren't symbols. They weren't celebrities. They were still soldiers. The fight might be over, but the responsibility was just beginning. Still, the world was different. The Calvo, now without leadership, without their core, fractured. Dozens of species that had been under their rule began to rebuild. Diplomacy replaced fear. Peace talks, once impossible, now became the norm. And at the center of it all stood humanity, bruised but unbroken, stronger than ever before. Rick spent most of his time debriefing with the United Earth Council. They wanted answers. Scientific, strategic, and ethical. Could Aquam Dominus be weaponized further? Could it be used to enhance more humans? Could it be harvested, sold, traded? Rick answered every question the same way. No, this wasn't a tool for dominance. It was a reminder of survival. He made it clear the Hydro Commandos weren't to be replicated en masse. The process was too dangerous, too personal. What they had done had worked because they had chosen it. They had committed to it with eyes open. And even then, not all had survived. Those who had were different now. They felt the change, not just physically, but morally. A part of them would always carry the Aquam Dominus, but what mattered more was how they chose to live with it. One evening, months after the war had ended, Rick stood by the ocean near the Pacific Defense Watchtower. The waves crashed quietly against the rocks. He could still feel the water in the air, like it resonated with the part of him that had changed. He wasn't alone. Henley joined him, a coffee in hand, her hair blowing in the breeze. "You never talk about it," she said, glancing at him. "What it feels like." Rick exhaled. "Because I still don't know how to describe it." "Try." He looked out at the dark water. "It's like carrying a storm inside you, but instead of tearing you apart, it gives you focus, direction. It's always humming, always watching. But it doesn't control me. Not anymore." Henley nodded slowly. "Do you ever regret it?" Rick was quiet for a long moment. "No," he said at last. "I'd do it again. Not because of the power, because someone had to take that step first." She smiled softly. "You never saw yourself as a hero, did you?" "No," he said, chuckling. "Heroes get medals. I got modified DNA." They stood there for a while watching the tide. Then Henley asked, "Do you think we'll need them again? The Hydro Commandos?" Rick's face hardened slightly. "Maybe, maybe not. But if we do, we'll be ready." Epilogue, a lesson for the real world. The story of the Hydro Commandos isn't just a sci-fi tale about alien warfare and transformation. Beneath the plasma rifles and high-tech suits lies a very real lesson, one deeply embedded in our human history and spirit. At every turning point in civilization, humanity has been forced to confront fearsome challenges: wars, plagues, injustice, disasters, both natural and man-made. Often the world throws something at us that seems unstoppable, something designed to break us, to control us, to rewrite the way we live. And every time we adapt, we don't always win the way we expect to. Sometimes victory doesn't look like strength, it looks like survival. Sometimes the answer isn't building a bigger gun or running away. Sometimes the answer is understanding the threat, learning its rhythm, and changing ourselves, just enough to endure it without becoming it. Just like Rick Raddick and his team chose to step into the unknown, to walk through fire instead of around it, we too have the choice in our lives to confront hardship with resilience. Not with blind aggression, but with purpose, with unity. The Aquam Dominus was created to destroy, to control. But when it met the human spirit, flawed, fragile, stubborn, and magnificent, it was changed. Because the truth is, the greatest power in the galaxy isn't some alien nanite weapon. It's the human will to endure, to rise, to adapt, and to fight, not just to survive, but to make something better in the aftermath.